Hello, third year students. Today I am going to begin the poem To Autumn by John Keats. In the previous class, I had given you an overview of the poem, and this poem by Keats is one of his most celebrated and admired poems, and it is also one of his final poems written in the year 1819, just before 2 years of his death in 1821. Keats, in this small poem of only 3 stanzas, describes the season's unique beauty and charm in such a way that the entire autumn season comes before our eyes. And how Keats does that? Let's see by reading the text. This is the first stanza of the poem, and Keats writes, "Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. To bend with apples the most cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel. To set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells." So in the first line, Keats is calling the autumn season or describing the autumn season as a season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. Mist means fog, dhund. And if you remember, I had told you earlier that the poem was written at Winchester in England in the month of September, and in England months from September to the end of November fall under the autumn season, and then the winter season starts. And the weather in these months is temperate, neither very hot nor very cold. It remains rather cool. So Keats rightly says that this is a season of mist, season of fog, and mellow fruitfulness. And this is the season of mellow fruitfulness. Mellow means smooth and soft. Fruitfulness, the abundance, the plenty of fruits. Autumn is a season when there are plenty of soft and smooth, well-rounded and ripened fruits, because at this time of the year crops are harvested. So there is a abundance of everything, especially of fruits. Close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless. With fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. Next, now in the second line, Keats personifies autumn and says, "The autumn is the close bosom friend of the maturing sun." Keats imagines here autumn as someone who is an intimate friend, close bosom friend, who is a close friend of the maturing sun. Mature here means old. The sun is in its mature state, but the heat of the sun is not scorching, conspiring with him how to load and bless. And together, these two, the sun and autumn, are conspiring. Not the use of the word conspire, a negative word that means planning and plotting against someone to do some harm, right? But in these lines, Keats does not use this word in the negative sense. Instead, the conspiracy that is going on between sun and autumn is about to do some good to the plants and vegetables. And the planning is how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. They are planning how to make fruit grow on the vines. Vines means creepers, baleen. They're planning how to make fruits grow on the vines that round the thatch eaves run. Thatch is a roof covering made up of straw, leaves, and other similar material. And eaves is the slopy edge of the roof. So creepers that curl around the edge of roofs of these thatched cottages. These thatched cottages are generally found in England. So autumn and sun are planning to make fruits grow onto the vines and fill all the fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel. Next, fill all the fruit, to bend with apples the most cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. The sun and autumn's next plan is to bend the most cottage tree. Moss is kai. Trees that are covered in moss and are growing around some cottages will bend down with the weight of apples, with the load of apples. Autumn and sun will make plenty of apples, will make grow plenty of fruits on trees like apples, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. And to ripen these apples to their very core, that means to their very center. The ripeness will go into the very center of the fruit, and the trees will bend down with the weight of these apples. To swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel. Gourd is a common name for different types of vegetables like pumpkin, cucumber, squash, and melon. And the autumn, in the company of his friend sun, is planning to swell the gourd. Swell means to develop, to make them grow fully. To swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells. Plump, that is something that is big and round. And plump the hazel shells. Hazel is a plant of nut. So autumn and sun are planning to make hazel shells big and round with the sweet kernel inside it. Sweet kernel is the inside part, the inside seed that we eat. To set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. And to bloom more and more flowers till the late season, later flowers for the bees who are sucking up nectar from these later flowers to make honey. And this is the happy time for the bees, because there are so much of flowers that the bee starts thinking until they think warm days will never cease, until they think that these warm days will never cease, will never come to an end. Cease means to stop. For summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Clammy means sticky. Sticky because of the honey and wax. And the word is used for their beehives. And their hive is referred here as clammy cells. The Keats says that the bees have collected so much honey in their clammy cells, and these clammy cells are filled with honey. For summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Overbrimmed means their hives are overflowing. They are filled up to the edge. The season has provided a rich harvest of the flowers, and that has made bees to think that this season of flowers will never come to an end, and they will go on making honey, filling their hives to the edge. And Keats imagines this rich harvest is the result of the conspiracy of two close bosom friends, that are autumn and sun. So, in this first stanza, Keats describes the fruitful aspect of the season. And fruitful because it is the time when crops are harvested and there is abundance, there is a lot of everything. And Keats, in this first stanza, shows his talent for sensuousness. As I had already mentioned before, that Keats' poetry, especially his odes, appeal to our five senses. And this particular stanza is one which appeals to our sense of taste. For example, the images and phrases like in the very first line, mellow fruitfulness, and trees bending with juicy ripened apples, gourd, sweet nuts, and beehives overbrimming with honey. These all work together to evoke a very rich image of the season. Students, this was the first stanza of the poem. I will continue with the second and third stanza in the coming classes. Thank you so much for now.